After Thor had a dark vision of Thanos, he wanted to take a break. Life was very hectic lately, and being the king of Asgard was getting to him, so much so that he wanted Donald Blake to take control of his body. Now, who's Donald Blake? Well, Donald Blake is basically a person that Odin created who is a medical surgeon that also shares Thor's body. I know it sounds weird, but because Odin wanted Thor to be the best king he could be, he created a human named Donald Blake that could take over his body, giving him a taste of the human experience in hopes that it would make him more humble and help him understand how fragile the humans that he protected were. So basically, Donald Blake was a way of making Thor a better person, and whenever Donald Blake was in danger or needed to save someone, he could go back to being Thor with the flick of a switch by slamming this wooden cane onto the ground. But for the time being, Thor wanted Donald in the driver's seat, because when Donald was in control, Thor went into something called the Elder Sleep, a sleep where he could communicate with spirits and old dead kings. He wanted to go there because ever since becoming the king, he struggled to lift his hammer. For some reason, Mjolnir felt heavier than before, and even more concerning was that everyone was able to pick it up whether they were worthy or not. Tony Stark was able to pick it up, some random mechanic from Oklahoma was able to pick it up, and even Loki was able to pick it up. Plus, he had that vision of Thanos wielding it, which obviously he wanted to avoid, so he wanted to go into the All Sleep and ask the old kings if they knew what was going on with his hammer. But the only way to do that was through Donald Blake. Loki didn't think it was wise, and especially because Thor was asking him to lie to everyone about where he was while Donald took over. But because Thor was desperately seeking answers, he made the transformation anyways, but for some reason he didn't go into the All Sleep upon doing so. For some reason he landed in a world that was clearly struck by chaos, and in fact it was Donald Blake's world, the place where he dwelled when Thor was in control. Usually it was peaceful, sunny, and filled with smiles all around, but now it was nothing more than a lifeless pit filled to the brim with bodies and darkness. Thor was baffled, clueless as to why things were the way that they were, but determined to get to the bottom of it. Donald Blake, on the other hand, was in the real world, but he didn't look the same way he looked before. He sported blood-stained armor made from the hide of a dragon, and immediately upon seeing Loki, he threw a knife directly into his neck and then eventually snapped his arm. Clearly he had gone mad, rambling about how he'd never be a refuge to a god again, and then making sure that he really got his point across by stating that he wasn't Thor and never would be again, then snapping the cane that allowed him and Thor to take turns being in control. But sadly, that's when the issue comes to an end, but if you want to see what happens next, let me know in the comments down below.